We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Because I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
Life finds a way.
Welcome to Silver Screen Biases. Each week we pick a movie off of IMDb's Top 250 and dig into it. We're examining truth claims in critically acclaimed movies while also examining our own biases. I'm Nelson.
This is Jeff.
And this week we're diving into 1947 film. 1927 film Metropolis.
Yes.
Jeff, what did you know about this movie before you watched it? Anything?
Nothing. I just knew that the name also shared a name of a city from Superman.
True.
Which
came first?
This movie.
Okay.
The two creators of Superman liked this movie. Don't know why. We'll get into that. But they liked this movie, and then they took that name as they wanted that name to be prominent acknowledgement in their comic book. So they made Metropolis the city of the Daily Planet and all that stuff. So
now I know that you typically don't care for older black and white movies. Is this your first silent film?
It's our first silent film for the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't think it's my first silent film. I've watched maybe it's my first silent film. I've watched silent shorts, like old school, Charlie Chaplin
clips,
shorts. Yeah, Duck Soup and stuff like that. And even some like the old school, I feel like some of the Little Rascals or like something that was like the Little Rascals growing up. My grandma used to show me it was like I've watched silent stuff before in black and white, but for the podcast, this was our first.
Okay, well. Let's take a step back from Metropolis for a moment.
Let's do it.
I want to read an email from a listener. This is from Jody, last name redacted. He writes, I'm sorry I did not email sooner. I started listening to your podcast after you exposed yourselves on the Libertarian Christian podcast. I want to stop there for a moment. We had a blast on that.
We exposed everything.
We exposed everything. Mostly our ignorance. We're actually going to be having Doug Stewart on in the future for his, I think, favorite movie.
One of his tops.
One of his tops.
He mentioned it early on in our conversation with him.
That's right. Yeah. We'll be having him on for that. Continuing with his email. I ran a podcast for 59 episodes a long time ago. If I remember correctly, we got one email in the year plus that we ran the podcast. It was very discouraging. I guess I assumed that you guys were swamped with email every week and that I would just be an annoyance. Jody, you are the second person to email us. I never listen to comedy podcasts and rarely to podcasts that are funny. You guys make me laugh. Sometimes straight up belly laughs. It's nice to see Jeff coming around to the libertarian way of thinking. It took me a long time. Keep up the great work. I understand the hours of editing behind the scenes that none of us will ever see. It's worth it. Your brother in Christ, Jody.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Jody, for that.
That's fantastic. Now, I have not converted to libertarianism at this point, but I appreciate the, just the observation.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fair of Jody to say that you're more libertarian today than you were a year ago. You certainly understand the positions better.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that means I lean more towards the way. Just I'm more conversational with it, and I'm more in tune with things you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. But, you're still a radical communist, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Burn it down.
Yeah. Well, no, not that kind. You're a Leninist. You're a tanky.
Yeah.
Strong government.
Yep. John Lennon.
Yeah, John Lennon.
Yep. We all live in a yellow submarine.
Yeah. Yeah. Truer words have never been sung. All right. So that's all I had as far as listener feedback. I like to go into those when we don't have a guest.
I love that. Yeah.
So thank you for that, Jody. The belly laughs thing, I knew that would touch Jeff's heart. We love to make people laugh. We love to make each other laugh.
I never really thought of our podcast as a comedy podcast. And
Yeah.
if the fact that he acknowledged it like to be that way, it made me happy.
We're two chuckleheads that want to talk about deeper things, but we can't get away from the fact that we like to make each other laugh.
And I think you and I both have the same goal of like, we don't want a listener to end an episode feeling rough. You know, like we want the listeners to feel good about themselves after they listen to the episodes. Like, oh,
Yeah. So, listener, I want you to hear this. You are handsome.
Yeah.
You are smart.
Yes.
You are a skilled metal worker.
You have 2 left feet. Wait. No, sorry.
And they're both beautiful.
They're both. There it is. Thank you, Jody.
So we're recording this later than expected. We're actually recording this on another day that normally we would be recording for 2 weeks from now. But instead we're only recording for a week from now. And that's because last week I sounded like RFK or Macho Man Randy Savage or a smoker of 80 years. I was rough. And you might still hear a bit of that in my throat, a little bit of dryness and crackliness.
Sexy.
Yeah.
I love it.
I feel like, oh man, I'm showing my lack of fandom. Friends, the musician, Phoebe.
When she gets
she caught a cold and
it changes her singing voice. Yeah.
So I feel a little bit like that.
Are you a Friends episode? Or like you Friends fan? Like
I think it's fine.
I do too. It's just okay. It's okay.
Little interesting fact about me: I love helping people move. It is one of my favorite things. Okay? It's true. You want to know something I absolutely hate about helping people move?
Stairs.
Without fail, someone will start yelling, "Pivot."
Oh, quoting Friends.
And I hate it. I hate it so much. In fact, I've had friends reach out to be like, "Hey, can you help me move?" Blah, blah. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm there." But for the record, if anybody says pivot, I'm leaving. I hate that joke.
That's fair. Yeah. My family still religiously will do like the arm signs, like the the listeners can't see this, but like the whole like
linked below
together and doing like the fists and stuff. Like my family does that all the time in replace of swearing.
Yeah,
it's great.
My sister, she will do those hand gestures at me, and I will just flip her off. So, it works. Tomato.
Yeah. Yin yang.
Yeah.
What do you have a favorite sitcom?
Oh yeah, I do.
Good. Cool. So, okay, all right. What is your favorite sitcom?
Adult animation really falls into sitcom, I think. So if we allow for that, my answer is Futurama.
Okay.
If we're not allowing for that, my answer is either How I Met Your Mother or Malcolm in the Middle.
Ooh. I've never seen Malcolm in the Middle.
Oh, buddy.
I know.
But it might not hit the same for you because you didn't have brothers.
I didn't. No, I had 4 sisters.
You had 4 sisters.
And I still do.
Yeah. You had like bedazzled denim jackets.
Yeah. I looked real good.
Yeah.
But How I Met Your Mother. I struggled with that one. I have watched that one from front to back. It's funny.
I've seen it all more than once.
It's funny.
My daughter's birth coincided with the finale of the show, and so I didn't see the finale for some time.
You weren't giving birth. Jen was. You could have watched it.
No, I did. I was there.
You were.
Yeah. It was
missed opportunity, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, I finally watched the finale a little bit later. Have you seen the finale?
Yeah, I've seen it all. I've not seen the new Hulu series.
Nah, I tried it. No good. But the finale, for those of you that have seen it, you'll understand, because it was so close to the birth of my daughter, I cried for weeks. I would think about it again and cry all over again. That was tough.
I liked the story. So I wanted to like that show so much more than I did. There was one thing in particular that ruined it for me, that put a bad taste in my mouth, that makes it not enjoyable for me. It's not the story writing. It's not the characters. Characters are great. It's specifically Barney. And this happens in Friends too, but I feel like it's more prevalent in How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
It's more praised in How I Met Your Mother. I had a hard time watching Barney chase after 100 lays.
I would say it is not praised. It is. You are.
It wasn't looked down upon.
We've talked before about heel and face and kayfabe in professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Barney is a heel. You're not supposed to like him. And the fact that
But everyone does.
Yes,
So it doesn't work out the way they want.
Well, hold on. Everybody loves a good heel. He is the villain, but he's a really good bad guy. You find yourself rooting for him, even though he represents all kinds of values that you dislike.
But either way, no one was talking bad or interjecting or saying how like you shouldn't be like that. But that whole episode where he was going after his 100th.
No, they were all telling him this is really gross. And then then when he finally tells his middle school bully, "Ha, I beat you." The guy's like, "Yeah, I was lying, and this is gross." Like, no, Barney is not a sympathetic character.
No, but I struck, but that thread ran through the whole show.
Yeah,
of Barney's womanizing and stuff, which ironic.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what makes it. I think that's part of what makes it funny is that everybody like it's a kayfabe type thing where the audience knows that this is a gay man playing a straight man.
It's funny. Like the show itself is funny. The writing's good. I like the storyline. I like how they set
I know
it,
you're a bigger fan.
I struggled with
New Girl.
Right. And there's some of that in New Girl.
There's a lot of that in New Girl. There's plenty of that.
Not to the extent of How I Met Your Mother.
Interestingly, Friends was much more normalization of
sleeping around.
Yeah,
and I'm not a fan of Friends.
How I Met Your Mother, there's a married couple that's very committed. Then you've got two characters that they're sleeping with their partners, and they have a handful of different partners over the course of the series, but they're not sleeping around. And then you have Barney, who is sleeping with anything that he can. And I think the show really paints him as depraved for it. But then with New Girl, they take it even a step further, and it's really interesting. You know, these are like the three big ensemble cast sitcoms of the last 20 years. They're the three big ones, and it's interesting watching the sexualization in them become tamer and tamer.
Yeah,
you'd think it'd be the opposite.
Yeah. So no, I'm not saying it's not a little bit hypocritical because I love New Girl.
Yeah,
and Schmidt is also a womanizer and glorifies his box of leftover items from but
again, you're supposed to dislike him for it.
There was, and then I love Schmidt. Like
you're supposed to dislike that behavior.
Okay,
you like him, but you dislike that behavior. He plays in the first few seasons. He's more of a heel character, and that changes around.
Yeah, but yeah. So I liked How I Met Your Mother. I it was the same thing with Friends. Like not even the sexual aspect of it. Like the whole Ross and
Rachel
thing. Yeah, for 10 seasons.
Yeah,
like move on. Like I didn't even care if they got together at one point. I'm just like, just move on from this storyline. And that was also a part of How I Met Your Mother. Like there was one threaded storyline through the whole seasons.
Yeah.
Which was the part. Well, I get that was the part of it, but there was also a part that was just like, it became redundant at times.
Sure.
Even if that was the shtick. Like, but the Ross and Rachel thing wasn't the shtick of Friends.
No.
All 6 of them was the shtick, but somehow that continued to trump and continued to trump and continued to trump. And it got annoying. There's funny parts in Friends. I could go without watching it again.
Here's one of the wild things about Friends.
Wild thing.
You would think in your mind, a sitcom that introduces a monkey. That sounds like a last-ditch effort when the writers have run out of ideas. That's like episode 4.
Yeah, that's season 1.
He's like, hey, by the way, I have
Marcel.
a monkey now.
Yeah.
It's just like...
And it's funny. Like it's a great cast. Like the chemistry between all 6 of them is great. It's just there's some of the writing and some of the redundancy, which
I don't think it's the greatest of all time. A lot of people give it that.
And
I don't think it is.
New Girl has issues. I still think New Girl's the best in my opinion, but that's just for personal reasons. I don't think it's obviously not the best overall. And it's not the most critically acclaimed, but like that's the one I've leaned towards, and that's the one that I related to the most because I've also lived in a flat in LA with 4 other people.
I remember, I think it was season 1 or 2 of New Girl. My daughter overheard us watching it and then started singing, "Who's that girl? It's Jeff."
Yep.
And she would sing that to you at church.
She would, and I always appreciated that. Anywho, 1927's New Girl, Metropolis. What'd you think? Oh, wait, did you have anything else before we get into the movie?
Yes.
I knew it.
I meant to do this before we recorded.
Oh.
but instead we're going to pause on the recording and come back after it.
Okay.
Have you heard the song Rich Men North of Richmond? It's
No.
viral.
Jason talked about it Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I've not listened to it yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it until Jason talked about it. And then I've seen it all over the place on Facebook since, but Jason was the first.
I had a migraine Sunday morning, and so I skipped the service, and so I apologize, Jason. I'll be honest, the first time I listened to it, I missed a lot of the lyrics.
I mean, he sounds like a libertarian.
It's it's blue. People are saying it's country music, which is not entirely accurate. It's bluegrass.
It's folk.
So I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for pay, so I can sit out here, waste my life away, drag back home, drown my troubles away. It's a shame what the world's gotten to for people like me and people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Living in the new world with an old soul, these rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control. They want to know what you think, want to know what you do, and they don't think that you know, but I know that you do, because your dollar ain't shit and it's taxed to no end because of rich men north of Richmond. I wish politicians would look out for miners, that's ERS, like people who work in mines, not just miners, ORS, on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese are milking welfare. If you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground because all this country does is keep kicking them down. So, Jeff.
Yep.
You said that sounds very libertarian.
It's like Green Day meets Ricky Skaggs. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with it. I don't know. I hate jumping on trends. And so the fact that this song's trending, I'm turned off by it. I don't even care what they're talking about.
Not to be hipster on you, I saw this like right when it was beginning to take off.
How long has it been? Has it literally been like a week? Like, or has it been
It's
a little
not
longer?
been, I think I can tell you exactly how long.
I get it. North of Richmond is Washington.
That's right. 13 days. That video is 13 days old. Rich men north of Richmond. Now, some people have latched onto this saying that this is classist, right? And it's criticizing the wealthy. It's not. It's criticizing a particular class of the wealthy. The rich men north of Richmond. Not just all wealthy men. The ones that want to have total control. But then you're also seeing people on the left saying that this is a neo-Nazi anthem. Now tell me, Jeff, what in that song do you see? And this, trust me, all of what I'm saying is going to become relevant when we talk about this movie. What in this song do you see that could possibly be far right? Nazis aren't far right. They're left. But that's not relevant to what the people saying it's a neo-Nazi anthem think they mean.
I did not pick up any neo-Nazi.
Yeah, so the closest thing you might get to a far right position is where he says, there's people starving in the street while the obese are milking welfare. If you're 5'3" and 300 pounds, my taxes ought not pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Some people are saying that that's anti-welfare, but really it's not. What he's saying is, we've got people that are starving, and then other people are being fed with my money to buy things that are killing them.
Yeah.
It's really a criticism of welfare, not of how welfare is being done.
How are people twisting that in the neo-Nazi?
Because being anti-welfare is a right-wing position, and by right-wing they mean conservative, and anything right of center to them is Nazi, even though the Nazis were left of center. It's because they don't understand history and they don't understand politics, and they want to smear a singer so that people won't go listen to it. Really, this song isn't left or right. It's populist. It's working man versus elites.
Try that in a small town, Nelson.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I heard that song too come out and then watched that video.
Yeah, I skipped that viral one. I think that song...
It's not worth your time.
Yeah. No, I listened to it, but like that song didn't resonate with people the way this one did.
Yeah.
The only reason that song took off is because some butthurt leftists got upset about the content of the song.
The video.
This song took off before it was getting skewered by the left.
I like his voice. I mean, musically,
he's talented.
It's a fun, but
undeniably talented. So that's going to become relevant as we talk about this movie.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and get into some of the stats on Metropolis.
Yes, 1927. It's our first silent film. It is a foreign film, but sort of irrelevant when there's no language
Yeah.
outside of the script that's on the screen.
And the title, or I don't know the term for it, but the stills that had text,
yeah.
you can find subtitled versions of. And we watched the 2010 version, which is the most recent release. We'll just explain that.
We'll explain that later. Our version was 2 hours and 33 minutes long. Directed by Fritz Lang. All the versions are directed by Fritz Lang.
That's right.
Technically, it's not rated. Notable cast. I didn't recognize anybody in the cast.
Yeah, me either.
So I'm not saying there's no one notable in it, but no one that I was aware of or prominent in our culture currently today. 8.3 out of 10 on IMDb.
That's right.
117 is where it sits on the top 250. Almost like right there in the middle.
Yeah.
Right there directly in the middle as of recording this episode. Now, the Rotten Tomatoes is a little skewed because when you look it up at Rotten Tomatoes, it comes up as released in 2002.
Right.
So depending in that one on Rotten Tomatoes, it only shows it as 2 hours long versus 2 hours and 33 minutes. So
Right.
there's some varying stats, and we'll get into that why here in a little bit. But Rotten Tomatoes has it at 97% tomato meter, 92% audience. You got what's the highs and lows for the IMDb top?
Yeah, so in 1996, when IMDb Top 250 was launched, it debuted at 138. In 1999, it hit its lowest point at 145, climbed steadily to 60 by 2006, and it slowly fell since then. This movie, for a very, very long time, it was released, and then immediately after the live airing, a quarter of the film was lost. And not like the last quarter, like the last half hour. No, there's just like bits and pieces of the movie. So there was a the secondary release had a bunch of stuff cut from it. In 2008, they found an original copy.
In, I believe, Buenos Aires, Argentina, right? Yep.
That's right. And we'll get into a little bit about why it might have been in Argentina in a second here.
Conspiracy.
So in 2010, they released a copy where the missing pieces were edited back in. Now, the missing pieces were 26 millimeter film, and the complete version is a different aspect ratio. So when you watch the complete, well, that's what it's titled, The Complete Metropolis, released in 2010, when it cuts to the recovered film from Argentina, you'll have like black around the borders where pieces were trimmed. I didn't see a whole lot in those segments that was like, the movie needed this. I think the trimmed version's fine, but I did enjoy watching the complete original vision for this movie. Interestingly, though, in 2008 and 2010, you'd expect that, you know, fans of Metropolis, when in 2008, when there's news out that there's a new copy, you'd expect some spike. Or in 2010, when the complete version is released, you'd expect a spike. There seems to be no impact on the IMDb score. Although in 2013, between like December and January of 2014, there was a sudden drop of several points. I don't know what movie came out around then, but yeah, the budget information was kind of difficult to find. It's estimated that it would cost 5 million wear marks to produce.
What about who marks and what marks?
So the Wehrmark, the other name for the Wehrmark is the Reichsmark. The Reichsmark was introduced in 1924 as a permanent replacement for the paper mark. This was necessary due to the 1920s German inflation, which had reached its peak in 1923. The German inflation was so bad, Jeff, that when they introduced the Reichsmark, one Reichsmark was equal to 10 million paper mark.
Holy crap.
Sorry, no, not 10 million. I got that wrong.
10 billion.
1 trillion.
Wait, what?
One Reichsmark was equal to 1 trillion paper mark. To stabilize the economy and to smooth the transition, the paper mark was not directly replaced by the Reichsmark, but by Rentenmark, an interim currency backed by the Dutch bank, or the Deutsche Rentenbank, owning industrial and agricultural real estate assets. So they were backed by industry, agriculture, and hard assets. The Reichsmark was put on the gold standard at the rate previously used by the German mark, with the US dollar worth 4.2 Reichsmark. So, converting Reichsmark to US dollars and accounting for inflation should be about $369 million to produce. Now, all of what I just told you about the Reichsmark is relevant to the context of this movie. This movie was made in 1927. I asked our research assistant, ChatGPT, to tell me a little bit about 1927 Germany. This is the interwar period, also known as the Weimar Republic. 1927, Germany was undergoing significant changes and developments both politically and culturally. Here are some key aspects of Germany during that time. Weimar Republic. 1927 marked the later years of the Weimar Republic, which had been established after World War I in 1919. The Weimar Republic faced numerous challenges, including economic difficulties, political instability, and social unrest. The economic situation. Germany was still recovering from economic aftermath of World War I, which had left the country in a state of hyperinflation and financial hardship. In 1924, the Dawes Plan was implemented, providing a framework for reparations payments and stabilizing the German economy to some extent. Cultural flourishing. See if you recognize any of these names. The 1920s in Germany was often associated with the Golden Twenties or Roaring Twenties period, characterized by a cultural and artistic flourishing. This was particularly evident in cities like Berlin, which became a hub of creativity, intellectualism, and progressive ideas. The era saw advancement in art, literature, music, theater, and film with figures such as Bauhaus School artist Otto Dix and filmmaker Fritz Lang making notable contributions. Political tensions. Political tensions were prevalent during this time. Extremist parties, including the far-right Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party, known as the Nazis, led by Adolf Hitler, were gaining traction. The Nazi Party's ideology was rooted in nationalism, anti-Semitism, and opposition to the democratic Weimar government. Cultural movements. The Weimar Republic saw the rise of various cultural movements, including the new objectivity in art and literature, which emphasized realism and critical social commentary. This movement countered the earlier expressionist movement and reflected the changing socio-political landscape. Interestingly, this movie is considered to be one of the better expressionist movies. Technology and scientific progress. Germany was also making strides in technology and science during this time. The country was a leader in various fields, including physics and chemistry. The establishment of the Bauhaus School in 1919 had a significant impact on design, architecture, and modernist aesthetics. Of note, and we actually know this because we watched Oppenheimer, the U.S. recruited a lot of those notable physicists and chemists in Operation Paperclip. Social changes. The 1920s saw changing societal norms, especially in urban centers. There were shifts in gender roles and a greater emphasis on women's rights. The era witnessed increased social freedoms, particularly in Berlin, which became known for its lively nightlife and diverse subcultures. Challenges and instability. Despite the cultural and scientific advancements, Germany was still grappling with internal and external challenges. Political divisions and economic struggles persisted, and the rise of extremist ideologies posed a growing threat to the stability of the Weimar Republic. It's important to note that the events and developments in 1927 laid the groundwork for the significant political and social changes that would occur in Germany in the years that followed, including the eventual rise of the Nazi regime and the onset of World War II. All of that is a backdrop to this film. It all provides context for what Thea von Harbou, the writer of the book that inspired this movie, and her husband, Fritz Lang, were thinking about when they made the movie.
There's a lot of words there.
There's a lot of words there.
I knew some of them.
And you knew a lot of them.
Yeah.
Don't cut yourself short. Now, I do want to talk a little bit. So it's been a while since we really dove into what was happening at the time this movie was made and who made the movie. But because of the unique time and place that this was produced, I kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole. So Thea von Harbou, she wrote the book Metropolis, which was intended to be made into a movie, and her husband of the time, Fritz Lang, produced it. Now, Thea von Harbou, she's Bavarian, and her husband, Fritz Lang, was Austrian. He was half Jewish. And as the culture and political situation shifted in Austria and made him feel unsafe, he fled for his life. Thea von Harbou and Fritz Lang divorced when he found her in bed with another man, a man whose name I'm probably going to mispronounce, Ayi Tendulkar. An Indian man who was much, much younger than her. So Fritz Lang flees Austria because he's worried, I'm half Jewish, I will be persecuted under these laws. And he was right, he would have been. But Thea von Harbou joins the party. She becomes a Nazi. Now, a reasonable argument could be made that because all movies in Germany during this time were made by the Nazi Party, to make any movie, you had to be a Nazi Party member. Okay, a similar thing to happen to Ludwig von Mises, an economist that I'm a big fan of, who has written extensively against the Nazi Party. But to be an economist in Germany in that period, you had to be a Nazi, right? And so until he fled, he was part of the Nazi Party. So there is a sympathetic argument to be made there. However, she claims the reason she joined the party was to protect her Indian husband. But her husband fled Germany early on because he was worried about persecution, and he remarried in India. She stayed in Germany, made a ton of propaganda films. So I'm a little less sympathetic to her. I think she was a true believer. And I think this movie does a really interesting job diving into that. It talks about that. So her husband flees to India, his homeland, then writes her and says, hey, I found another woman. I'd like to divorce you and remarry. And she gave him permission. He met his other woman at a Gandhi meeting because they're trying to segregate from Britain. And Gandhi knew both of these people personally and said, hey, you need to wait at least 5 years to get married and no kids until after India has independence. And they apparently kept that condition. They had a daughter, and the daughter wrote a book about meeting Thea von Harbou later because they went back to India. They went back to Germany after the war. So it's all kind of...
I'd be intrigued to read that book.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear a little bit more of that story behind it. Like,
I don't know the title off the top of my head, but it's linked below for those that would be interested. Among her politics, so as I've said in the past, I've said in this episode, the Nazi Party was socialist and they were left. And she was an active member of the Nazi Party, and part of that activism was fighting against some German policies on abortion. Abortion was illegal in Germany, and the reason it was illegal is because they believed that the Aryan people were the cream of the crop, and so we need to make sure that every Aryan child conceived is born. And she had a lot of the same rhetoric that you'll see today of, if I want to be a contributing citizen, I need to have the autonomy of not being tied down to children. I need to be able to pursue my passion and contribute to society in the ways that I see fit, and that might involve abortion. Her position also included this somewhat nuanced position, I'll say, that abortion is not ideal and should only be legal until we find a way to prevent pregnancy perfectly, which we still don't have, by the way.
right.
And so I think a lot of pro-abortion rhetoric has abandoned that talking point. But I found all of this backdrop to this movie very, very interesting, and I wanted to share that with you. So yeah, a movie made by two people who were very much steeped in the culture of their day. And the culture of their day was a reaction to the poverty that followed World War I, rapid inflation from the central banks. And this movie mentions central banks, but doesn't talk about inflation. And the Nazi Party was largely a populist movement until it took root. And the song that we just covered was a populist song. And I think that's going to tie into what we have to say about this movie. Now, you've got some questions for us before we kick off, right?
Quiz.
Jeff, have you seen this movie before?
Yeah, okay. Wait. Okay, so not like actual like standard.
Sorry, did your eyes
questions.
fully glaze over when I was
They
going
did.
through all that?
No, not fully good, but like I have like prepared questions, just like a little bit more topical things. Yes. Okay, so yeah, first time watching it, but as of recording this, maybe a professed expert on this movie. This was also my first time. Did you enjoy it?
I really did.
Did you have to try to enjoy it, or were you captivated by the very beginning of it?
I think
did it take a while for you to warm up?
I think it took me a little while to get its hooks in me, but I really enjoyed this.
Have you watched silent films before?
Yeah.
Okay. What other ones have you?
Charlie Chaplin's The Kid I've seen several times. and nothing else is coming to mind at the moment. But I know I've seen others.
Is Charlie Chaplin's, is that one American?
Yeah, he's an American.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so first international silent film for you?
Yeah, I believe so.
Look at us being cultured. I didn't like it,
Okay.
and I don't think it had nothing to do with like the commentary. It was just like it just wasn't. It wasn't a pleasing movie to the eye.
Mm.
Like, not that it needs to be in color for it to be just like the overacting. I have a hard time getting into. And obviously, you've got to overact when you're not using dialogue. So, like, I get why.
And also, this
I
is
get
the
why.
early days of cinema where
Right.
these are still stage
They're theater
actors.
actors and actresses. Yeah, like I get that, but just there's a lot of things in this movie that were very interesting topics, interesting story points, things that happened that were intriguing.
Yeah.
But I had a hard time investing in the storyline when, and maybe I'm just sounding like an old or a young hip or whatever generation doesn't like culture, but I want to like these movies. Like, so just because I wanted to like this one, being from 1927, being like an iconic like silent film, I was like, ooh, it'd be really cool to have this one in my arsenal to say I love it and I'd sound cultured.
Yeah.
So I was going into like, okay, I've got to like this one just to make me look more distinguished. I went in intrigued. I couldn't take it seriously. And the overacting, the guy's facial expressions, I had a hard time investing in it.
Yeah.
The music was great. I enjoyed the music. Now, that was the one thing that I noticed, like the 2.5 hours of nonstop orchestral music.
Yeah.
Was like, I really enjoyed the soundtrack.
I would love to see this with a live symphony.
Yeah. Well, I would, no.
I think that'd be so, like Blossom Music Center does that.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be so,
Lord of
so
the
cool.
Rings.
There's a handful of things in this movie that I don't know if they were tropes before the movie or if this movie created the trope. Like one of them is, for example, in Beauty and the Beast, Belle's father is basically the character of the mad scientist.
Mm-hmm.
Like in mannerisms, the way he looks, all that. The same thing with Frollo from Hunchback, the priest, looks just like the investigator character,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
who also in a couple scenes is a priest.
Yeah.
And I looked into it. I couldn't find any explicit, like, yeah, this was an homage. Nothing like that.
I can't say the only thing. I know there was a lot of things in this movie that just getting outside of the biases, but just talking about how it affected culture and stuff. Like a lot of scenes in this affected the live action first rendition of Frankenstein. Like, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of that. The way things were depicted. The robot, that fembot,
Yeah.
C-3PO, was designed after her.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
The actress that was in the makeup for the robot
Uh-huh.
was the same actress that was played
Right.
by the same actress that played Maria, and I thought
Right.
that was an interesting
Yeah,
touch.
that's fun. It's fun. Yeah, I did.
I really like the Art Deco style too.
Yeah, I will say I was very impressed with some of this. I don't know if it's called CGI. They didn't use
The effects.
computers, but like the effects, there were some really cool. Like I was more intrigued on how did they do that
Mhm.
on film versus like computers. Like that's the stuff that was intriguing the most to me and stuff. Like was like how'd
they pull
do
that off?
How'd they do
Yeah.
that? Yeah, so I found that fascinating. Not overwhelmingly like, oh man, that's amazing, because like obviously like I've seen better graphics and stuff, but like I thought it was very impressive for the oldest movie. This is probably the oldest movie I've seen to date in my life.
Yeah.
I thought it very impressive, some of the things that they were pulling out. Like, yeah, and it was big. Like the scale of this movie was big. That big machine at the beginning, where the hundreds of people were walking up the steps. Like the scale of that was awe-inspiring, or not. I wouldn't know if wouldn't say inspiring, but like that was like I was awestruck by the, like just the scale of that, and it was creepy. So there were some emotions and stuff I enjoy. Like there were moments I appreciated it, but overall, I was like, this was a long 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So, and Lindsay watched most of this one with me, and there were also points where she's like, "Well, that's kind of cool," and then another 30 minutes went by. That's kind of, like it took a while for it to continue to entertain us. Lots of dull, like lull time.
Yeah. yeah, the pacing needs some work.
Yeah.
An unofficial final question that we do in our wrap up that I think we can answer now is: would you be open to seeing this redone?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'd be curious to see how they would do it.
The
I feel
rights
like-
to have it redone have been bought and like traded a bunch of times, and nobody's ever done anything with it.
I wonder if there's like a wonder why.
Yeah.
Because like it's a prominent film in film industry.
Yeah.
If they, because we're doing this podcast and because I've watched the original, I would watch it if they remade it. I wouldn't be the first in line to go, yes, they need to remake this. I was just, and maybe it caught me at a bad time.
Maybe.
Like,
And it's a massively influential film.
it is, and I've had a week to sit on this film.
Yeah,
too,
because
you know,
we
we
watched
were
it and
supposed
then
to
I couldn't
Yeah,
record.
it's like I've watched some YouTube videos on stuff. Like I continued to have it on the forefront of my thoughts, you know, throughout this past week, just thinking about stuff. But like, I still just have this kind of blasé attitude about it. Like I still can't convince myself to enjoy it. Like I appreciate aspects of it, but it is what it is. Now I know you've got a lot of content to talk about, and some of the things that I saw, I got some things I can start throwing out for us to discuss here. Unless you have anything else.
No, let's start with what
Okay.
you got.
Okay, so I don't think it was the first thing that was introduced when you meet the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah.
Like,
A lot of religious iconography in this.
yeah, the Tower of Babel,
Moloch.
There's essentially a Golgotha.
Mhm.
Like there's a 3 crosses. Well, there's multiple crosses, but like
Yep.
essentially, yeah, it's like lots of biblical imagery.
Inverted pentagram.
Yeah,
A lot of end time prophecy stuff.
yeah, So the 7 deadly sins. After they introduced those things, I kind of dwelled on that for a little bit.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, like, are they introducing this because this is like this is a structure to how they're telling the story, and now like we're introduced to these 7 things that are being, you know, dealt with within these characters and stuff. Like, I think that could have been something, and this is where we can discuss it. Like, I feel like that part was kind of like what they didn't do anything with it. Like I was wanting more. Like if you're going to introduce like 7 things that could like lead to death, like obviously greed was in there. We saw greed.
Yep. Lust.
We saw lust,
Wrath.
uh,
Gluttony. Sloth.
Wait, we did see gluttony?
Hmm. Another term for gluttony is like indulgence.
Okay, so it's not just food.
No.
Okay.
Food and drink and drugs.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But I don't think this movie was riding on those specific things for the whole storyline. Like,
No.
for me, I was like, when they introduced it, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, felt like it was introduced as like, this is the premise. Like we're now talking about the 7 deadly sins depicted in a,
Right.
Like,
That was really just more of a setup for
right.
when she emerges as the Scarlet Woman, I think, and the slaves that are holding her up get replaced by the
Yeah.
depictions of the
So
7
I was just a little, I wanted more of that. I wanted them to dive more into just the imagery or the playing those things out more intently and playing that up a little bit. So I just, that was one of the first things that struck out to me. I was like, oh, and then the Tower of Babel. That was
in modern cinema, and I'm saying modern like basically color film on, you don't see a whole lot of science fiction and occultism.
not, it does exist, but you're right. It's not
common at all. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, occultism was really big in Germany at the time. Hitler was wildly into the occult, and that's kind of really what inspired the Indiana Jones
No,
franchise.
the occult is a generic term though, right? Like, cause there's multiple different types of occult, right?
Yeah, occult just as a broad brush for like anything pagan.
Okay. So was Hitler, was he devoutly following pagan beliefs, or was he just interested in more of like a hobby type, like, oh, it's a very fascinating lifestyle, I want to learn about it but not follow it, like, or like was he following pagan beliefs?
Yeah,
And,
so
I mean,
it's somewhat
obviously he wasn't-
sensationalized in Indiana Jones, but he was legitimately looking for occult weaponry. Like that, like he thought that this was part of this was part of his war strategy.
Mhm.
And he got a lot of criticism from. We're going back to Das Boot, and they were talking about how like he's a bad general and all these things. That was part of his war strategy is we're going to leverage the supernatural. And then that carried well into the Cold War. And there are people who claim that that still is happening in American military strategy today.
Oh, man. Yeah, because I almost feel like that would justify Hitler a little bit more and give him like, oh, well, yeah, it's because he was a Satanist. Yeah, of course he's bad. Like
Yeah, and he
like,
he
of course he did. I believe that way.
and he pitted Protestant against Catholic while claiming himself to be Christian.
Right.
So
That's fascinating. Was Hitler's end goal to literally like world domination? Like was his goal to conquer just specific countries, or was he wanting to become like a all powerful, like, especially now knowing like the mention of the occult, like my brain's going sci-fi now. So just ride with me for a second.
yeah,
Like, was he trying to take over the world like that big of a scale? Like if he believed in like finding these like supernatural weapons, like was his goal for world domination, not just country domination?
At first, no, but over time, yes. When they invaded Poland, the goal was we want to be autonomous. We want to have enough land that we can feed our own people and be autonomous region. He wasn't a communist, but he was a Marxist. He believed communism, which was a global vision of Marxism, was not possible and that it could only be done state by state. And so he wanted an autonomous Marxist state. And to do that, we need more land. Let's invade Poland. We'll take it. It's a very fertile land. And then what he realized was, we still don't have enough. Let's invade a little bit more and take a little bit more, take a little bit more, because it's never enough.
Right.
And that's because Marxism doesn't work. That's not how people behave. It eventually became this Third Reich. We're going to conquer the whole of Earth, but it really still wasn't conquer the whole of Earth because he had allies, right? Like he didn't, and maybe his plan was, once it's only Mussolini, Japan, and I, then I'll betray them too. That might have been his plan. We don't really have evidence of that,
right?
So yeah, so he was certainly an imperialist. Well, that's not even right either. He wasn't looking to make an empire. He didn't want to conquer these countries and have these countries serve him. He wanted to absorb these countries. So,
I knew he was a bad dude, but it's just kind of interesting putting him in like this science fiction. Like,
say what you will about Hitler, but I think he was a real jerk.
I was scared for a second.
It's one of my favorite Norm Macdonald jokes.
Oh man, and going into that second thing, then like the Tower of Babel, like I think this one is a good leadway into some of the other things, which I know you probably have some talking points on. Like there was a lot of imagery, a lot of I keep wanting to say dialogue, lots of communicated storyline that was, chasing after this idea of like, you've got to build for success. You have to put in the work. You have to get you have to get your minions. You have to just slaves, even like, slavery was a big imagery in this movie.
Yeah.
And this whole Tower of Babel thing is like this corporate center, the dude's dad. I don't remember the names. It's been a week. Hold on. Let me get the names here. Okay. So Frederson was the young guy trying to free people from the machine.
Yeah, Fredersen.
His dad, Johan Fredersen, or Jan Fredersen. I saw him building a Tower of Babel. And there was a lot of imagery of climbing up steps and stuff. Like he was trying to build a machine, or just have these machines that created him wealth, created him to get him to his next spots and stuff. And there were stepping stones. These humans were stepping stones,
right,
to get to what he wanted. He himself was also going into occult type stuff, like science fiction. He, meta science fiction to get people to create things to get him to achieve these goals so he can dominate things.
Yeah.
And so I saw kind of that parallel with the Tower of Babel of he was trying to achieve God.
Yeah.
He was trying to reach God. If not, and the question is if he would have achieved it, what would he have done? What would he have done if he would have achieved that status he was going for and stuff? And that's always the thing with the Tower of Babel of what would you have done if you would have successfully used the Tower of Babel to reach God?
Yeah. So
would you have been thank you, God, for everything you give us? Or would you have been come down to art? Like there's that whole like, what was their intentions for the Tower of Babel? Was it genuine or was it like malicious?
So let's read. It's a short bit of scripture that is the Tower of Babel.
Amen.
And I think this movie takes I don't know if it was an orthodox in its day approach to the Tower of Babel, but I felt like they put some things in there that aren't in the Bible. So we're reading the New International Version, Genesis 11, 1 through 9. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to the sea to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If, as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Now, in Metropolis, they added in some additional narrative that the people building and the people who had the idea to build weren't in direct communication.
Mm-hmm.
The people building were hired to do it, but then grew to resent the people whose idea it was, and there was a revolt, a populist revolt, which is not what Scripture shows us, not the story Scripture tells anyway. Interestingly, we actually know where the Tower of Babel was. I've linked below a video from Expedition Bible, a really great YouTube archaeology channel, which we
verified.
And he goes through all the evidences of this is why we know that this is where it is.
This is the Tower of Babel.
Yeah. Also, Babylon as well. We another Expedition Bible video linked below as well, exploring where Babylon was.
We're going to take a break so I can watch these real quick.
They're like 30 minutes each. So
okay,
maybe later.
I want to watch those.
Yeah, he's great.
I did not know that channel existed. Anyways, that was a lot of what I was observing as far as the message was of this whole like domination, build your way to success, don't care about who you hurt. But then so within this past week of watching, preparing for the episode and stuff, I was watching some YouTube videos and stuff. And
yeah.
Not one specifically that said anything, but just there was this constant theme running throughout some of these commentaries that were talking, just this idea of like, would you say that this movie predominantly, more so than religious or military or Nazi or neo-Nazi, whatever, more than any of that, would you say that this movie has a message of the power of having classes within the working, classism? Like, would you say like that is the predominant like theme throughout this thing? Because like I saw a bunch of other stuff. Like I think like the thing that kept coming up was just this idea of like, no, you're beneath me. No, I'm above you. That was, for me, that was the constant thing. Like, no, you can't go there because you're not a part of that group. No, you can go underneath because you're a slave or something. There's all these things like they can achieve or not achieve things because of where they're from. And that was every character.
Yeah. No, I would absolutely agree. I think classism was a huge theme in this movie. Given who the author and directors are, Thea von Harbou and Fritz Lang, I think it makes a lot of sense that classism is a predominant feature of this film. Classism is kind of the root of populism,
mm-hmm.
where you have the working class frustrated with the elites. Now, Marxist populism is that anybody that's wealthy is oppressing you, whereas more like libertarian populism is some of the wealthy are in positions of great power, and they use that power to control you. Going back to Rich Men North of Richmond, he's talking about powerful elites in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I think that really ties into this particular movie. Thea von Harbou, she was a populist. The Nazi Party was very much a populist movement. It had largely progressive for its day ideas, and it also tied that political elitism to a banker class, and it tied that banker class, which was predominantly Jewish at the time, to anti-Semitism. And that's kind of where that all came from.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had pretty deep classist and I don't know if she was a Marxist or not, but she had deep classist and populist ideas that I think would have been very attractive. The Nazi Party in Germany would have been very attractive for somebody like that. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, she was not unique in that, right? The majority of because of the massive economic issues in the Weimar Republic, Germany and Austria and all those countries that were kind of in this thing, the pump was primed for a populist movement.
Yeah. Okay. Those were the big things I observed.
Yeah, I think those are great observations.
And for me, like in some movies where like, and I'm not just making excuses, but like this was a different type of medium for me to watch entertainment on. So like, I think maybe I was focusing on trying to watch the story without dialogue. So there was some depth I was probably missing in some of these things, because I was focusing on like, okay, wait, what's going on? Like, I'm not a critical thinker. You always say I am, but like watching this movie, like I had a hard time. Like, wait, why are we here now?
No, I don't think you give yourself near enough credit.
I had to go back and like there was a couple times where I rewound this movie, like take the tape out, wind the tape back and put it back in the VCR.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to rewatch some scenes just to see like, wait, how did we get from this point to this point? And like, okay, for instance, I didn't realize at the beginning when Fredder sees the big machine for the first time, he goes to the doors, he chases after that girl, Maria. I didn't realize that we were supposed to assume or supposed to know that when that face pops up in the machine, that's a hallucination. Like, I just thought like, oh, like there's a face on the machine. Like, it wasn't until I watched a commentary, like, and he hallucinated that it was eating the people. I'm like, I don't disagree. I don't agree with that commentary. Well, these were some of the things where I didn't know what to think. Like, there was a face, there wasn't a face. Like, so maybe it wasn't a hallucination.
No, I don't think he hallucinated. I think what that was the director or whoever's idea it was, whether that was Thea's or Fritz's, that was them trying to communicate to us very plainly, this machine is an allegory for Moloch. Yeah. Are you familiar with Moloch at all?
No, but was it mochi? What's that? Mochi? That Chinese or Asian like squishy food?
Yeah, it's very similar.
Mochi. I love that stuff.
Yeah, mochi.
So
Moloch or Molech is a name or term which appears in the Hebrew Bible several times, primarily in the book of Leviticus.
Oh, yeah.
The Bible strongly condemns practices which are associated with Moloch, practices which appear to have included child sacrifice. Now, Expedition Bible, I'm going to try and link it below if I can find it, also covers some of that stuff of places where Moloch was worshipped. Now, here's a few things that are interesting about the worship of Moloch. One of the most defining characteristics of the worship of Moloch, one of the things that they would do is you'd have this great big statue, and you'd build like a bronze statue, and you'd build a fire at its feet, and the feet would become red hot. And then you would lay live infants on it as a sacrifice to Moloch. Sometimes, though, instead of killing the child, they would instead there would be a priest on the other side of the fire, and you would literally pass the baby through the fire, a baptism of fire through Moloch. And this is what God condemns in Leviticus.
Oh, okay. We're good.
Alex Jones, his big break was when he infiltrated Bohemian Grove. Have you ever heard of Bohemian Grove?
No, but I've heard of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Very similar.
Okay.
So Bohemian Grove and this is all from memory, and I've only ever heard this all once, so I'm probably getting this wrong. Pretty sure it's in North California. And it's like this place where like really connected people go to hang out. And he snuck in. And the allegation from him, assuming that he even truly did sneak in and all this is legitimate, is that there was a ritual worship of Moloch there. And that the men at Bohemian Grove used depraved sexual behaviors to initiate each other, but also kind of like as a blackmailing entrapment. But then a lot of these people go on to great positions of power. So within U.S. recent history, there is a lot of conspiracy of occult practice meshing with authority and power.
You see that like with the Masonic temple and stuff like that. Like
that's right.
I mean,
I don't know how much of that I buy into. Like on the one hand, I don't think it's happening, but on the other hand, if it were,
would it surprise you?
Not at all. Right? If I found out that all of this was actually very much happening, wouldn't surprise me at all. It's like you look at the behavior of the people in power, they lie their way into these positions, promising people all kinds of stuff, which they never deliver on. And then they blow up brown kids overseas so that they can line their pockets with oil money. Right? Like it's absolutely depraved, absolutely evil. And then, to quote the song we were referencing earlier, wish they cared more about minors than minors on an island somewhere, which is a reference to Jeffrey Epstein, who, despite all the whistleblowers we've seen over the last few years, nobody's talking about what happened on Jeffrey Epstein's island. That's where Moloch fits into this. Now, some of the ministries that work in ending abortion in America, they refer to abortion clinics as temples of Moloch. Because what was the key thing about Moloch worship? Sacrificing infants. Yeah. In this movie, we see this machine as an idol of Moloch, which it turns into, and whether it's a hallucination or allegory, but all these men are throwing themselves in. I think this movie, ironically, considering what we know about Thea Harbaugh's politics, I think this movie was a condemnation of abortion. Oh. Because all of the children are going to drown. And the parents were warned, hey, if you do this, it's going to flood the city. And they do it anyway, and they're celebrating because now they're finally free of the torment of their lives at the sacrifice of their children. And even then, the children that survive are only children big enough to walk. I didn't see a single infant in any of those scenes.
Right.
I think this movie unintentionally becomes a massive condemnation of abortion and the way that people look at it as like, I'm going to free myself of the burden of parenthood so I can pursue the things I want and I won't be tied to the judgery of the machine.
There's some steep words there, Nelson.
Yeah.
But I can see that. I can see in the non-robotic Maria, she does have a motherly figure, like so. There's
very maternal,
but
Ave Maria.
Oh, that's why the song's name. The song's after this movie.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh man, I feel like we should break in song. How do you solve a problem like Maria?
There was one time where I was helping in a kitchen, like a professional kitchen. And the lady that runs the kitchen, her name is Maria. I was introduced to Maria, and I said, how do you solve a problem like Maria? And she looked at me deadpan and said, I'm not a problem. And man, like I've never been so intimidated in my life.
She's clearly never seen Sound of Music.
And then a year later, I ran into her again. I was helping in her kitchen again. And I was her second, basically. Like the first time I worked with her, I was just some guy. The second time I worked with her, I was the second person in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But her and I became friends. And I told her about the first time we met. And she was so embarrassed. She's like, I am so sorry.
That's fantastic. Clearly, she didn't remember you from the first time.
No, she did not at all.
Yeah, so Maria, the non-robotic Maria. Like she had that very much like motherly, saintly,
Oh, yeah.
Catholicism.
I will say, as much as this movie was overacted, that actress did a really great job of doing a very maternal character and a very
creepy, robotic,
evil.
Demented. Yeah, I'd agree with that. And just so I can after hearing what you've saying about that imagery and stuff, like I can see where she has more of a powerful portrayal of that dichotomy of both sides of that.
Yeah.
So that's cool. No, I'm still stuck on the Bohemian Grove thing. That's fascinating.
Yeah. And then
I love a good conspiracy.
All of the degenerate behavior happens in Yoshiwara, which was the club. And I was like, that's too specific to not be a reference to something.
Oh.
It was a
Super Mario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Yoshiwara was a famous red light district that was founded in Edo, Japan, the 17th century. And it existed as a red light district until 1958. So at the time of this movie, it's still a famous red light district when the movie was produced. So that's like to its original audience, when he says he sees Yoshiwara, that's supposed to be like, oh, but to us, we're just like, it's just some nightclub.
But if it said Amsterdam or something like that,
right. It was Vegas.
Yeah.
There's a line. There's a few lines in this movie. There's one particular one.
Just a couple.
Your magnificent city, Father, and you, the brain of this city, and all of us within the light of this city. And where are the people, Father, whose hands built your city? Off where they belong. Where they belong? In the depths? He nods. And if those in the depths one day rise against you? And he scoffs at that. But they did rise up against him, didn't they?
They did.
And interestingly, when they rise up against him, he says to his man, whatever happens tonight, it is my express order to allow the workers to do as they please. And then we cut to a scene, someone saying, Joe Fredersen wants to let those in the depths use force and do wrong so that he can claim the right to use force against them. This really is a great snapshot of what some of the more conspiracy-minded people think happened on January 6th.
The storming of the Capitol.
The Capitol Police had been instructed, this is documented, to not stop them from invading. In fact, the Capitol Police, their numbers were thinned that day, which was uncommon, especially considering we know we're gonna have a lot of people here. We should have good security. And then we have, I think the FBI has admitted, yes, we definitely did have plainclothes officers that day. The conspiracy theorists say that the plainclothes officers were involved in egging on the crowd to do it. I don't know that I believe the conspiracy. I also don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Whether people are responsible for their own actions. But we do know from the footage a largely non-violent process. Doors were opened. People were escorted through the building. Mm-hmm. This is verifiably true.
Yep.
Here's something that I thought was really interesting. So the first line of the movie, and it comes up repeatedly, the mediator between head and hands must be the heart.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I remember seeing that.
And then later, the only thing keeping the workers in check is the promise of a mediator coming to them. And then later, Maria says, this is the false Maria. You know, I've always talked about peace, but your mediator hasn't come. You've waited too long. Your time has come. Who is the living fodder for the machines of Metropolis? Starve the machines. And so they don't destroy the machines. They just stop working. Mm-hmm. I have my notes here. Interesting how rarely violent revolt against tyranny is portrayed as sinister. But here it clearly is. Because the people are being betrayed by their false leader. I think that this movie, through its allegory, through its religious symbolism, and I do want to come back to the bit out of Revelation, Fredersen is very much our savior character in this.
Our white knight.
And him as a savior, he is the mediator.
To be.
Yeah. So he is the savior character in the movie. he is explicitly the mediator between hand and heart,
Mhm.
which means that this movie is saying that Christ is mediator between the proletariat, the working class, and the state, the rich men north of Richmond. I think it's really interesting that it's making that claim. I think it's explicitly making that claim.
Mhm.
Your thoughts?
I do not disagree. Yeah, it's not something I.
Picked up on?
Yeah, it's not something I picked up on or was reading into, but I can't argue against it. It makes sense, and it's especially with the line that's said throughout multiple times. Yeah, no, yeah. I'm just outside of agreeing with you. I don't have much more to add to that. I think it's.
So I've said in the past that the state is the modern, so the original sin. Adam and Eve, in order to be like God, eat the apple.
Mhm.
Tower of Babel, in order to make a name for themselves, we will be like God, we built this tower. It is the responsibility of the church to establish and define what is moral,
Mhm.
and the church has largely abdicated that responsibility to the state. The state, in its hubris, attempts to define morality and attempts to be like God in defining morality.
Mhm.
The Joe Fredersen character represents the, to use Marxist language, the bourgeoisie, the state class.
Mhm.
And I think that his son, interestingly, his son is born of a robot. I don't understand how that works. And the robot's name,
Well, you see, Nelson, when
when a daddy robot and a mommy robot love each other very much.
and they want to create love that grows.
Yeah. So I just think it's really interesting, some of the weird Christological language in this, right?
Yeah.
You have Maria as a character who is the second Hell. Hell was the Hel,
Right.
was the first robot.
Which that specific character or that hell thing was the reason that there were different versions of this movie put out.
Yeah.
Some places didn't like that being a topic because it resembled too much hell.
HELL.
Yeah. So
And also
that was part of the
above
reason.
her tombstone at that place was an inverted pentagram, which is more satanic iconography.
Correct. Yeah. So this is the first time we had mentioned hell. So I just wanted to, that was part of the reason why there's been chopped up versions leading to, which I want to get into before we end, which we're not there yet. But you do your born to say your Argentina thing. So
oh yeah.
I want to make sure we don't forget about that. So
thank you.
Yep.
I want to jump to the bit of scripture that they had unedited. I think that it had it in its original German translation of the Bible, and they just translated it from German to English rather than giving the English translation. But here's the English translation. This is Revelation 17, Babylon, the prostitute on the beast. I'm going to read the little bit that's in chapter 17 before where it comes in. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. With her the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries." Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, where I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names, and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and the beast she rides. She has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast, which you saw, once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. The inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come." This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, one is, the other has not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. The beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7th and is going to his destruction. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose, and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. When the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to accomplish this purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Jeff, are you aware of how many hills make up Rome?
I am not.
It's a city founded on 7 hills.
7 hills. Okay.
So one interpretation of this bit of scripture is that the author of Revelation, John, is writing in a allegorical sense about the fall of Rome and conferring the fate of the then deceased city of Babylon to what will happen to Rome. I don't think it is unreasonable to also say that any empire that resembles Babylon, that this could also be said of. It puts the empire puts itself in the place of God and says, no, we are the absolute authority of right and wrong, but we also indulge in all of these sinful behaviors and condone sinful behaviors. We punish good and celebrate evil, and the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords will bring them low. I, as a Christian anarchist, that's what I see when I look at this. Like, I don't want to get into too much like eschatology type stuff, because like a lot of that is pure conjecture.
Right.
But that's what I see going on here, is like Babylon is a type, if that makes sense. Like these empires or even, states that would presume to have the authority of God over us, while also being entirely corrupt and sinful. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts? I might cut all this.
No, that's fine. I have thoughts. I have always struggled when it comes to eschatology stuff.
Yeah. It gets weird.
And not just because I'm uneducated, because I am uneducated, but just I'm not.
Stop saying that.
No, with eschatology, I am.
Okay.
Like specifically, like I don't know.
Stop talking about my friend like that.
That's fair. I have a type of personality that, like, if I tend to dwell on it too long, there's stuff within that conversation that could really get in my head.
Sure.
About like, and not in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like, not in like a live like Jesus is coming like type of way, but in like a like just a paranoia type thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I kind of avoid eschatology. I think it's valuable to understand because it's in the Bible, and I think it's important to read all of God's books for us. But that book in particular is daunting because, like, I know I like conspiracies, I like questioning things, like I like mysteries, and that's a book of all those things. And I could probably really get consumed in it, and I know people do. People like
they go,
like, and like I'm not a far leap from being a doomsday prepper. Like, because like that stuff intrigues me. Like there's a bunch of different TV shows. Discovery Channel did like 2 seasons of a show called it was like their version of Survivor, but like it was supposed to be post-apocalyptic, and they had to survive on, like, they had an engineer, they had a medic, they had like, and they had to
oh, interesting.
I can't call The Colony.
Okay.
It was called The Colony. Was it
a reality show or scripted?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the situations were scripted, but the people's reactions and how they handled the situations were unscripted.
Right.
So I think,
Or at least on paper.
right, at least on paper. Yeah. So there was a lot of moments that like seemed real, but then the way they ended it was like, oh, okay. It's like but yeah. Anyways, I thought it was like I find that fascinating because like I do have that mentality of like, well, I should be prepared. I should do that stuff. Like, but then that same thing, like I could lose myself in just that. So yeah.
Sure.
So to not answer your question with that, like, I don't know if I have an opinion about that specifically because I avoid these conversations because like I know I can let them get to me if I allow them.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I know it doesn't answer your
No,
question.
no.
but
I
like,
think that's good. In fact,
but I intentionally stay away from this stuff because I could lose myself.
yeah, no, I think that's really wise, and it's actually consistent with what Scripture tells us. In Isaiah 8:11, starting in verse 11, this is what the Lord says to me with his strong hand upon me, warning me not to follow the way of this people. Verse 12, do not call conspiracy everything this people calls a conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear. Do not dread it. Verse 13, the Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. He is the one you are to fear. He is the one you are to dread. As much as in this episode, we talked a lot about some conspiracy type stuff because I do think it was relevant to the movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We are explicitly instructed to not take our eyes off of what's most important. And your instinct on that, I think, is really good and really godly. And it's not that conspiracies don't happen. We know that they do, but that we aren't to be obsessed with them.
Right. Doesn't mean I'm not fascinated by them.
Same.
I've got one more question for you, and I want to hear your Argentina information. So, depending on how we do this, my question for you, and you can answer it before or after your Argentina stuff, is at the very beginning. So, knowing what we've talked about now about the movie and how like things portray specific things and stuff, like the beginning when there's that kind of display of females.
Yeah.
I forgot that moment happened once he went through the gate of the city.
Yeah.
And thinking back then of the whole movie and like in kind of collecting my thoughts and stuff, I was like, what in the tarnation did that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Just like.
So the way that scene gets introduced, fathers for whom every revolution of a mechanical wheel meant gold had bestowed upon their sons the wonder of the eternal gardens. And that was what we then saw, was the Eternal Gardens. I know that you're very familiar with the Hunger Games.
I'm very familiar with Hunger.
And Games.
The Hunger Games, yeah. New movie this fall.
I think that that's the right way to kind of understand what's happening here.
Okay.
Is that this is an area for the sons of those who are incredibly wealthy to just engage in all of their base desires.
Mm-hmm. So you think that could have been like an initial test?
No.
Not like, because like, what was he supposed to do? Like, was he supposed to pick a lady and, play cards?
Exactly. The Eternal Gardens are for the uber wealthy to drink and play and eat and enjoy all of life's luxuries.
Mm-hmm.
It is pure indulgence.
Okay.
So that's what we're seeing there.
Okay. I forgot that moment happened.
Yeah.
Once he went through the gate.
Right. And I think that that's kind of a brilliant part of the directing of the movie.
Yeah.
Is that you're like put into this thing and then I think that is to put you in the same mind of Fredder. All of that stuff doesn't matter anymore.
Right. It was a very cool moment because I assume, and from the way his face expresses and stuff, like he enjoys what he sees.
Yeah.
So he's in awe of these beautiful women. He goes through the door and is immediately the opposite reaction to what he sees is the machine.
Yeah.
Again, and I realized this thinking back then about these moments. Like I didn't catch this as I was watching it, but like thinking about now, like it's kind of an interesting movement of emotion very quickly, going from pleasure island, lust,
luxury,
Like, yeah, and then immediately going through the gates of the city, and he sees destruction, death, slavery,
Yeah.
just classism. Like he just sees devalued people,
Right.
and dehumanized people and stuff. So yeah, I just thinking back, I thought it was a very cool progression of scenes.
Yeah. It reminded me of like F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Great Gatsby.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have not seen that. I've not seen the original or the new one.
Or Reddit.
Or Reddit, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been on Reddit. I don't have an account, but I've been on Reddit. They've got a cool little logo.
Yeah. So the class stratification there,
yeah,
and the decadence of the Eternal Garden, I think like it very much is like Great Gatsby, Hunger Games.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it wouldn't surprise me at all to find out in the Eternal Gardens people are vomiting after a feast so that they can eat more.
Yeah. Argentina, my dear.
Yeah, so even though I've said it's best not to dwell on conspiracies and become obsessed with them.
Do you have a conspiracy for us? Let's end this.
Are you familiar with the conspiracy that a lot of Nazi generals escaped Germany towards the end of the war to South America, specifically Argentina?
I'm not.
There's a lot of evidence to support this theory. And such a story would give really great explanation for how a Weimar Republic era, interwar era German film ends up in a museum in Buenos Aires. Also, interesting note about Argentina right now. Right now, one of the leading candidates for the next president of Argentina is somebody who basically shares all of my politics.
Is it you?
It's not
Are
me.
you running for politics?
No, it's a guy with a wild haircut and great big mutton chops named
Don't say Nelson.
Javier Milei, I think, from memory.
Similar.
So I've been somewhat following his campaign for a year or so now.
Is he a man of faith too? Like, or
It's
just
unclear.
specific? Okay, just
It's
okay.
unclear,
But
but
politically,
he's all in on Austrian economics and hardline libertarian.
I can barely keep up with American politics. How do you keep up with international politics? It's fascinating.
Well,
Like, how do you like? And you're rattling these names off the top of your dome too.
yeah.
Like, I'm just impressed. I'm saying this impressed.
Some people would argue that that I need better hobbies.
I mean, it benefits our podcast.
You know, a question that we should start asking our guests after we do our first three. A fourth one, I think, is a really good one.
Do you regret being on our show?
No, that's the final question before we close out. No, the fourth question I think that would be good to ask them is, what are you into? And we need a better way to ask it. But like,
Because some weird answers.
you know, like for me, like the thing that I'm into is politics. That's what I want to spend. Like that's what I spend a lot of my time
That's fair.
reading.
What's their passion?
What? Yeah. What's the thing that you're into? What's your hobby?
Agroeconomics is not one of my answers.
All right. Should we get into wrap up questions, or do you have any more observations from this movie?
That's it for the main observations. I wanted to like this one, Nelson,
I really did.
and I'm glad you did. Like, I
think it's a cautionary tale about populism, both in the movie and in the context of the movie. It's a cautionary tale about populism.
looking at my list so far of movies we've done, I'm realizing like I'm a consumer of films,
Yeah.
but like I don't think I would have that title of cinephile, or
Sure.
it's like because
Yeah.
like, 'cause,
We are movie likers.
yeah, but a part of me,
Chucklehead movie
part of me
likers.
wants to be someone who's like,
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Metropolis.
1927's
Fritz Lang.
like a part
Thea
of,
von Harbour.
because we've been doing this for a while now. Like a part of me wants to be like, I wish I had that mentality. But like I'm looking at these movies, like no, all of these foreign old films are at the bottom of my list.
That's just because you're xenophobic and don't like foreigners. I barely make the cut because I became a citizen.
I mean, I can't argue with any of that. But yeah, so just like, and in the top of my list is mostly modern or like hot, like current movies.
I think
So
it's really funny that
like,
early in this episode you talked about how you don't like viral stuff that's popular.
Right, and this is, and I realize the hypocrisy in this. Like I'm not jumping back on that. Like I stand behind both of these sides, and I don't know what the answer is.
It's
just like
a paradox.
I want to be more diverse. I wanted to like this movie.
Yeah.
I don't think I could sit through this again. Will I? Maybe.
Yeah.
And we'll get into our questions here, and we can break down some of this too. But I'm disappointed I didn't enjoy it.
Hmm.
And I do need to update my list. This is the oldest movie we've done so far. So the oldest movie is from 1927, and the newest movie is 2022. So,
and there's only 3 movies older than this on the IMDb Top 250.
So that's fun. So, all right, our questions. Would you recommend this film?
I would, and already have.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess we've had a week.
We've had a week.
Why did you recommend it?
Because
was there something specific you're like to the person you were talking to, was there like, you need to watch this because of this reason?
Yeah, because of I see it as both a cautionary tale about populism, the context surrounding the film, and that it's also, I see a repudiation of abortion and a kind of symbolism of Christ as mediator between the politically powerful and the politically unpowerful.
I hate to tell you this, but your answer is wrong. So it's supposed to answer, would you recommend this? No. But moving on. No, okay. No, that's cool. It's interesting that you've had, it's not often we've had time in between watching and recording. No. So with this movie specifically, like, you've had time to live with this movie a little bit before we recorded. So that's I appreciate that perspective. It is rated, not rated. Would you change the rating? Or like,
yeah, I would change that rating.
What would you rate it? Because
especially with
there is nudity. It's very hard to see.
Yeah,
but like,
it's there if you're looking for it.
Correct. And the only reason I knew it was there is because like
you were looking for it.
I read the parental, like because there are some movies on our list I'm not looking forward to because of the overuse of nudity. So
sure.
It's like I didn't know what to expect, so I looked at the parental things, and it did say this was coming in. So yeah, I was looking for it.
It's in the Suns Club, the Eternal Gardens.
Correct.
There's
it's quick. It's not sexual. It's not and
it's also like not bare chest. Like
no,
it's women who are bare chested but wearing lace over like loose lace. So
correct.
It's there if you're looking for it. Basically,
yeah. Would you rate it?
I'd say at least PG-13.
Oh, PG. Okay.
I think if you were to make this movie today, it would be R, and they'd lean in
for violence, or for like all the 7 deadly sins.
I think they'd go for all of it. Yeah, and I think that would be an appropriate way to do this movie today.
I agree. PG-13. In nudity aside, which was minimal, the language, which was minimal, joke. That was because it was silent film,
practically non-existent.
like, but just there's some frightening scenes.
Yeah,
that it's not that I think a 12-year-old couldn't watch it. I just don't think a 7-year-old could watch it as a PG movie. Sure. So I guess that's what I'm thinking of. Like, would someone under 12 enjoy it? No.
I don't even think necessarily a 13-year-old would enjoy it. But I think a 13-year-old is mature enough to handle it.
To handle the content, yeah. I agree with that. Has it aged well? 1927, it's 2023.
I mean,
it is 96 years old.
So one thing with old films is if they're set in the day that they came out, they become time capsules. And in this way, this movie isn't that.
Yeah. What was the year this movie was set in?
I don't think it says.
It doesn't say. Okay. Let me look that up real quick.
Yeah.
Maybe there's no answer to this, but now IMDb says this film was set in the year 2026.
Oh, okay.
But
so it still could happen.
So maybe that's from the book. So
yeah.
Maybe they're pulling that from the book.
Maybe.
But there is no.
I don't remember it in the movie.
There's no year mentioned in the movie.
Not that I remember.
But according to IMDb, for the listeners, that's where we're getting this stat. It says in 2026. So, which that's interesting.
I also think
they've got everything wrong.
Yeah. I also think that this movie has one of the things that's helped it age well is the cultural significance it has in cinema.
Yeah.
So influential. And I think it deserves its place in the top 250. And I would
Hey, whoa. We're not there yet. My goodness.
I'd put it in mine.
Ah, shoot. Okay, no, that's fair. That's fair. I don't think it's aged well because, like, the reasons I didn't like it is because it showed its age. But
Yeah.
I also wouldn't, again, and this is me being hypocritical, I wouldn't change anything because, like, I wouldn't want that movie to be modernized. I wouldn't want Disney to get their hands on it and redo all the CGI, like, or like add scenes of Obi-Wan or something. Like I wouldn't want any of that.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want it changed because, like, I like the aesthetic it has. The aesthetic itself, though, just wasn't entertaining to me. If that makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me, so I understand if it doesn't make sense to you.
No, like the Art Deco style and all that really suits it.
Right. It didn't captivate me and keep me enthralled.
Like, to do it today, did you ever watch Ex Machina with
You mean Ex Machina? No, I've not seen either of those.
physically pained me.
No, I'm actually very I only know that by its name. I don't know anything
It's
about
worth watching.
the film. Is it it's not in the top 250?
I don't know. Not off the top of my head. I don't believe it is, but it might be.
Okay. How do you spell it?
EX.
EX.
MA.
It's not.
Okay. I wouldn't like. It's one of those movies that like I wouldn't be surprised that it is or that it isn't. It's a very good movie.
Okay.
It would almost need that kind of style. Yeah.
2014.
Yeah. It's also kind of very much like
Oscar Isaac.
It's a terrific sci-fi movie that you really couldn't recreate because science fiction has come so far as a genre that it doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
To make it again, like you'd have to update a lot of stuff in ways that I think would undermine the story.
Right.
I would be really interested to see it faithfully recreated. Lean into some of the Art Deco styling.
Yeah.
Similar to how Great Gatsby with Leonardo DiCaprio recently. So
Yeah, I agree with that. Would this be in your top 250?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
As of right now, it'd be a no.
Yeah.
I
Where does it sit in your current ranking? Bottom half, top half.
Oh, bottom 3.
Really?
Yeah, it's right above Lawrence of Arabia and Clockwork Orange for the bottom 3. And again, I'm disappointed at myself that I didn't enjoy these, but I didn't, and I'm not gonna fabricate
we're not,
myself to be like this. I didn't like them, I really didn't like it. So it's
but also Jeff, like we've said a bunch of times, we are not film critics.
Not yet.
We're movie likers.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's in the bottom 3. And this is technically, this is our 33rd movie we've done. It's our 32nd in release.
Yeah, in my notes I put it as 23rd, and that's definitely not right.
So it's in the bottom 3 of the 33 movies we've done. But as you who are listening, this is the 32nd episode we've released. We had that awesome opportunity for Connor, which we'll get into next week's episode real quick.
Pretty sure Connor's 34. I think you might have that wrong.
Nope.
You are correct.
Yep.
I have it wrong.
So we had a really cool opportunity to get with Connor again. He was in town, so we recorded that episode a couple releases out. So
and that'll be out in a week.
Yeah, which that conversation was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just where it fell. So I am keeping track. Now, if I ever watch, which some of these movies I will watch again, now that I've made this list, for anyone who cares, I will update this list if anything changes for me anytime I review it, anytime I rewatch it. So if I watch any of the 32 movies we've watched so far, just personally, I will, if I change my opinion, I will update it. But
any other wrap-up questions, Jeff?
Did they say the name?
I don't know.
I don't think the word Metropolis was, well, it definitely wasn't verbally said. But did the word Metropolis come up on the screen outside of the title?
I don't think so.
I don't think it did.
No name drop. No title drop.
No title drop. They did not say the thing. They did not say the thing in a silent film.
We've already answered this other question, but is it based on a book? Yes, it is.
It is. Yeah, we talked about that book.
Thea von Braun. I probably got that name wrong. I don't remember it.
I believe it's Theo van Brien.
Nailed it.
Yep.
Thea von Harbo.
Oh, like the gummies.
Like
the Haribo gummies.
Very similar, actually. And that's, of course, linked below if you'd like to read the book that inspired the film, written by an actual Nazi.
When we finish all 250 movies, we're then going to start a podcast of all the books of the. We're going to do a podcast of the book reviews.
Silver Screen Pie's book club.
Book club. So join us in 2045 when we start that podcast.
Listeners, if there's any of you out there that want to start a podcast, Silver Screen Pie's book club, where you do the books based on the movies. No,
on the top 250.
Do the books that the movies on the top 250 are based off of, and you want to track with the episodes we've done, let us know. We will help you get that started.
Yeah. There's an opportunity there. But next week,
instead of Silver Screen Biases, it's Silver Screen Book Club. So it's still SSB. Yeah.
SSBC. Southern Baptist Convention.
Silver.
Next week, Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
With Connor, our good buddy Connor. Your gooder buddy Connor.
My goodest buddy.
But now he's become a very, very, very fun person.
Very friend of the show.
I've enjoyed getting to know him. Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And if you haven't, check us out on social medias. We do some things on there throughout the week. We do maybe some poll questions. We ask you guys some, interactive questions. But we also give you an opportunity, if you want to watch along with us.
Yes.
As we watch this before the episode drops of the following Monday, we tell you what that movie is, and we give you a chance to we give you a way to view that through one of our affiliate links.
Yeah, we as often as we can, which is almost always.
Yeah,
we have Amazon affiliate links in the show notes for next week's episode, as well as books mentioned during the episode. Yeah. Please click that, check that stuff out if that's something that you're into. If you are a reader of things, go read those things and use our affiliate links. That helps us out.
It does help us out, but more importantly, we would love for you to have a full involvement with your listening experience.
Yeah.
And I think
we want to engage with you in the comments.
That only comes with watching the movie and stuff. So if
you don't want to engage with randoms in the comments, you can always email us at silverscreenbiases@gmail.com.
That's right. So we will be back next week. This was the last episode for August.
Correct.
We've got big things coming right around the corner. Mm-hmm. We keep alluding to it. We're not quite ready to reveal all of our cards yet, but just be on the lookout. Sometime in September, announcements will start coming. And late September, we've got some cool things coming your way. Some awesome ways to get involved and get just more immersed in what we're doing here. So just be on the lookout. It's coming. It's happening. We're growing. We're moving. We're doing big things. We're moving to Hollywood. No, we're staying. But thanks for listening. And,
we're staying in Redacted.
Yeah, in Redacted. Have a great week.
I love you.
Thanks for listening. We had a great time putting this together for you.
To join the conversation, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Silver Screen Biases.
And on Twitter at Screen Biases.
We believe in value for value, so if you found value in our show, we ask you to consider supporting us.
Links to our social media and support can be found in the show notes.